You have two of his sons who are already under federal protective custody. His supposed ambush and arrest happened in a mediation meeting. Mexico is going counter the U.S.
Do you think that there's a chance that the U.S. government was involved with the Sinaloa Cartel?
The Sinaloa Cartel, realistically, is not the Sinaloa Cartel. When you talk about securing the border, you're not going to call the Mexican army. He has kids in the U.S. that showed up to his hearings that we shouldn't buy Chinese drugs, we should buy locally made drugs.
How powerful the cartel is.
For somebody who's never been arrested for 50 years, it's very suspicious on my end. I don't know. You have two of his sons who are already under federal protective custody. I think this is a retirement package for him. They sent him to New York, so I think they're going to probably utilize some of this as a political thing. But you have this individual who was not only operating openly in Mexico. I mean, his supposed ambush and arrest happened in a mediation meeting he was going to have between the governor of Sinaloa and one of the heads of the university there, because they were having some sort of issues, and that he was basically there to mediate. I mean, this is bizarre. You have somebody like him now in the possession of the United States, and the U.S. is dead silent with its counterparts in Mexico. And it's supposedly an FBI operation, which is kind of strange. Wherever this is heading, it's not heading in a way where the federal government in Mexico is comfortable with. So we've heard about designating cartels terrorist organizations. We've heard on both sides of the aisle, and I think this is where we're headed. We're headed towards a place where the U.S. is going to start putting pressure on high level government in Mexico. Mexico is going counter the U.S. It's day by day it's turning into a more of a Venezuela leftist type institution. If you look at it closely, the DA has been kicked out of Mexico for most of this administration, and collaboration and conversation between both sides has been kind of dead and stale. So I think this is where we're heading towards some sort of confrontation between both governments.
Do you think? I mean, there's several questions. I want to keep going down this, but do you think that there's a chance that the U.S. government was involved in some capacity with the Sinaloa Cartel, and so bring him back to the United States, like you said, is a retirement package, almost like this is how we save ourselves from the intel, and this is how we save him from getting killed?
Again, my opinion, just from seeing these things at a ground level, and also just I worked at different levels, from federal to state to local in Mexico, and I got to listen and hear a lot of conversations and just the way people thought about some of these cartels from the past. The Sinaloa Cartel, realistically, is not the Sinaloa Cartel. It's the Los Angeles Cartel, because that's where it was born. The Sinaloa Cartel, as an institution, as it is now, was probably born somewhere in L.A. And a lot of the people that showed El Mayo Zambada, who is kind of the historical head of that cartel, how to do his business, were people that were operating during the Bay of Pig incident. CIA guys that knew well enough about arming paramilitary groups and moving things through the air, on the ground, and through the sea.
I'm gonna get a lot of calls from this. Keep going.
This is historical knowledge. People know Mayo Zambada that lived in LA. I've heard stories, and again, these are just stories that I've heard during my time, of the U.S. asking for aid during 9/11 when the attacks happened to secure the border, and some of those calls were placed to the Sinaloa Cartel. When you talk about securing the border, you're not going to call the Mexican army to secure the border.
You call the cartel.
You call the cartels, and this is before my time. This I was in med school back then, but something I heard from the older guys is that you would see you would see a clear order from all polleros or smugglers to keep on the lookout for Arabs. And that was like a weird telling thing that they would have this instruction, right? So I don't know. In a lot of ways, it would make sense for the U.S. to have somebody like him.
Yeah. And also protect him as he's getting older, saying it's probably time. Let's bring him in.
Yeah. He has cancer. I think he's diabetic. I'm not too sure about that. As far as like some of his medical, I think they published his medical scans. But
he looked older. He looked very thin. He looked like
he's sick. Yeah, he's an old guy. He's sick. His sons are already in the U.S. under protective custody. There's There's a picture of one of them that I think surfaced about a year ago somewhere in an airport in Dallas, which is fascinating. That he's just like really moving about. He has kids in the U.S. that showed up to his hearings during his first hearings. So whoever he was, and again, this is all theory and just opinions. Whoever he was very essential and important for the U.S. and in U.S. interests. And it's interesting that he was the head of the Sinaloa Cartel. But now that he's out of the picture, at least as far as decision making and movement in Mexico, now you're seeing a cleanse of all of his operatives in Mexico, and it's not too clear who's doing this cleansing. Some people might consider, some people in his own criminal organization might consider him a traitor, or it might be an internal war brewing, or it might be the federal government down there trying to clean its tracks. Who knows? But it's very clear that something is looming in the future for Mexico and the United States as far as some sort of confrontation. And again, I've been talking about some sort of military intervention in Mexico for the past 3 years now. I said 5 years 3 years ago, and we're on our way to the end of this. We're on our way to something, I guess.
How powerful the cartel is. You and I know this, and I'm not sure why a lot of people don't want to acknowledge this, but they definitely run Mexico. And like you said, it doesn't matter who's president. I know the next president coming on board has the same ideologies as the current president, so there looks to be no real change in how they approach the cartel. And so is there some kind of belief that the cartel is trying to get enough power to eventually legitimately take over the country?
I think we're already there. The current president, Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, visited Sinaloa and specifically the hometown of El Chapo Guzman 6 times that we know of in this current administration, which there's nothing there of importance but El Chapo Guzman's mother's house and a bunch of tourists that want to take a picture in the big sign that says like La Tuna, right? He's been there 6 times in his administration. One of these times, he basically went on record to say that we shouldn't buy Chinese drugs. We should buy locally made drugs because we should support the local fucking drug dealers, I guess.